I installed an 81 watt-hour battery into my Lenovo Legion Go, along with a new backplate and a 4 TB SSD. The extra battery life has been well worth it, but the installation process comes with some real risks. Whenever I open up my Legion Go, I always like to go into the BIOS and disable the built-in battery. This way, if I accidentally hit the power button, I don't turn it on as I'm working on it. I find it under the configuration tab and it's labeled Disable Built-in Battery. The Legion Go is one of my favorite devices to work on. I like that you can detach the controllers and lay it flat on a surface. The battery kit does come with a set of tools for the process, but quite frankly, they're kinda cheap. I'll be using my iFixit kit instead. I wouldn't have been able to complete the installation without one of the tools that comes with the kit. I first had to remove the 6 screws that held the back cover in place. Prying it open was a little tricky because I didn't want to damage my dbrand skin, but once I got it started, it was easy to take the rest of it off. I used the edge of my pry tool to disconnect the battery. Then I just had to unscrew the SSD and remove it. I went online to the Lenovo support page. I found the hardware maintenance manual for the Legion Go. It provided me with the instructions I needed to remove the battery. First, there were 5 screws I had to remove in order to take out the battery bracket. I used my pry tool to slide off the cables from the battery bracket. I was really careful. I wanted to try to not disconnect anything. On the right side of the battery, there were 2 tabs I had to pull out. I think they were supposed to take out the tape that holds the battery to the Legion Go. Once removed, it should make it easy to take out the battery. Unfortunately, getting the battery out was not easy whatsoever. I was surprised by the amount of force I needed to use. I used this pry tool that came with my iFixit kit. I was careful with the sharp edge of the pry tool to not puncture the battery. It took a bit of force, but I was able to get the battery loose. Unfortunately, as a result of prying out the battery, I disconnected a bunch of cables I didn't want to disconnect. However, I was able to get them all back into place. Here's the new 81 watt-hour battery next to the older 49.2 watt-hour battery. The difference in the thickness between the two would play a role later on. I carefully slid the new battery into place. I made sure all the wires were out of the way. I removed the foam from the back of the battery bracket to make room for the larger battery. I slid the bracket back into place and then carefully replaced the cables. I reinstalled my SSD and secured it with a screw. I'm going to stop here and set this to the side for a second. This new backplate I'm using, I purchased it from a seller on Amazon. It stands a little bit taller than the old one. This should give me a little bit more room for the thicker battery. To use the new backplate, I had to take the hinges off the old one. There were 3 screws on top. Then I had to remove a sticker. Then there were 3 screws underneath the sticker I had to remove. The hinges just came out, and I installed them on the new backplate. I'm pretty sure this new backplate is just 3D printed. There are a number of people selling them on Amazon, eBay, and Etsy. I reinstalled the battery bracket along with the 5 screws that held it in place. Then I plugged in my battery and installed the new back cover. The new backplate didn't fit perfectly over the Legion Go, but with a little maneuvering, I was able to get it in place and reinstall the 6 screws. Then I powered it on, went into the command prompt, and ran a battery test report. This confirmed my Legion Go recognized my new 81 watt-hour battery. I'm going to run a test to see what type of battery life we get with this new battery. Before I do that, if you're into the Legion Go, hit the subscribe button. It lets me know I need to make more videos about it. First, I want to show you what type of battery life I was getting with my other Legion Go. I purchased this Legion Go as an open box item from Best Buy. I haven't made any changes to the hardware at all. I set the Legion Go to performance mode, the fan to smart, and the OS power mode to performance. I set a timer for 60 minutes. I began playing Marvel Rivals with the battery fully charged at 100%. I played several games of Marvel Rivals, and then I eventually switched over to Fragpunk. At the end of 60 minutes, the original 49.2 watt-hour battery was down to 36%. I ran the same test with the new 81 watt-hour battery. I started with it fully charged at 100%. I used all the same settings. Thermal mode was set to performance, OS power mode was also set to performance, fan at smart, etc. I played the same game, starting with Marvel Rivals, and then eventually moved on to Fragpunk. And after 60 minutes of playing, my new battery was down to 69%. And here are those battery percentages again after 60 minutes. The new battery had almost double the amount of life left. I wanted to see how long it would take the new 81-hour battery to charge. I let my battery drain down to 5%. I plugged in my Legion Go. I used the 65 watt-hour power adapter that came with it. After 30 minutes of charging, the battery life was up to 28%. So if you do the calculations, if you want to go from 5% to a full 100% charge, it works out to 124 minutes or just over 2 hours, which is quite a long time to wait for a fully charged battery. I tried to make the charging faster. I went back into the BIOS to the configuration tab, and under the setting charging speed selection under high loading, I changed it from slow to fast. I ran another test, but the results were the same. After 30 minutes of charging from 5%, I still only had 28% battery. I tried the same test with a different charger. This time I used my AO High 140 watt charger, but the results were still the same. 29% battery after 30 minutes. If anyone knows of any other settings I need need to change to make it charge faster? Let me know in the comments below. My new back cover was designed to fit a 2280 SSD. It has a small slot that you can slide it into. Upgrading the SSD was simple this time around, just because of some work I had already done to this Legion Go. Once I removed the back cover and unplugged the battery, I unscrewed the SSD. Now taking out the SSD was a little tricky because of the bigger battery, and I was too lazy to take out the battery again. But I was eventually able to maneuver it out. Then I was able to replace it with this new adapter. It's the same size as the original 2242 SSD. I just had to secure it with a screw. One thing I did do to make things easier for me in the future was to take a pair of scissors and cut this tape which normally fits over the SSD, being careful not to cut any wires, of course. And after that, I replaced the back cover, and the part of the adapter which you plug the 2280 SSD into naturally fits within an opening in the back cover, although I did have to install a couple of screws in order to keep the part where I plug in the SSD to stay in place. One thing I really don't like is how the SSD loosely sits into the slot. There is a small tab which I guess is supposed to keep it in place, but I really would have liked a way to screw the SSD into the back cover. The backplate also comes with a cover specifically for the SSD, but again, it just snaps into place. I would have preferred a screw to hold it on. That said, it seemed like it would hold well enough. Now these changes do add a bit of weight. On my scale, the stock Legion Go weighed in at 865 grams, while the upgraded one came in at 959 grams, and you can definitely tell the difference in weight, although I don't play with my arms straight out and my hands floating in front of me. Usually I'm resting my Legion Go on something while I play. All that was left now was to reinstall Windows. In another video, I created a recovery USB by going to the Lenovo support page and downloading their USB recovery creator tool. I'll leave a link to that video in the description below. Using a recovery USB meant I didn't have to go out and get a copy of Windows in order to do a completely fresh install. I used a hub in order to connect my USB to the Legion Go. I went into the boot menu, I selected my USB. After that, it was Lenovo's recovery tool that did the majority of the work of reinstalling Windows. So, after all these installs, I ended up with the battery my Legion Go needed, so now I don't have to worry about running out of power while playing my favorite games. And with a 4TB 2280 SSD, I've now got all the space I need for the games I buy but never play, the games that I play all the time, and the games that haven't been released yet, but I'm really looking forward to playing. But even though this worked out for me, it's not something I recommend most people try, which takes me back to the Legion Go support page and their safety and warranty information, which really discourages changing the battery, especially these lines where they specifically state that any non-Lenovo battery isn't covered under the warranty, or this line where they discourage you from changing the battery, or if you do have to change the battery, you should get it done by a qualified professional. Or finally, this really important line, where they say that improper installation could result in an explosion. Of course, the far simpler and safer option is to just carry a battery bank or play plugged in. For most people, that's going to make a lot more sense than tearing into the Legion Go. One thing I would definitely recommend, whether you upgrade your battery or not, is going into Legion Space and under Settings, turn on Optimized Battery Charging. This limits the charging to 80% and can extend your battery's lifespan. Now, I've had my battery installed for about a week now, and it's been running fine, but if something goes wrong, I'll definitely update you on what happened. Also, look out for my community post in about 30 days. I'll let you know how the install is holding up. But please, take Lenovo's safety warnings seriously. Upgrading the battery for more playtime isn't worth the risk of getting hurt or damaging your device. I'd recommend just taking it to your local computer repair shop. I've left a bunch of information about this install in the description below. I'll see you in the next one.